Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Dojo Live. This is Tulio Siragusa from Southern California, joined by Kim Lantis in Hermosillo, Mexico, and Carlos Ponce in
Hey.
Cuernavaca, Mexico. And our guest is just a little south of me here in San Diego. We have our guest joining us. Uh, and sorry, we're a little late. We had a little technical difficulty today, but we're going to be talking today about why you'll fail and what you can do to stop it. Is it really possible to stop failure? But before we get into that topic, let's get to know our guest a little bit. Let's see if we can open the screen a little here. It's just me on here. Ruben, I'm not sure. There we go. Excellent. Excellent. Aaron, welcome to the show. Let's get to know you a little bit. We have Aaron Guyett. Did I say that right? Guyett?
Guyett, who's a very
Guyett.
French.
All
Yeah.
right. Who is the CEO of Pedestal. Let's get to know Aaron a little bit. Thanks for joining us. Tell us about yourself.
Of course, happy to be here. Thanks for having me. So I am a technical founder. I've got experience as a software engineer, and as I segued out of pre-med, I was actually going to be a doctor, and I said, "Oops, everybody looks unhappy," and so I went right into tech. I've loved it. I love the tech space, and I've gotten to give back. So I started to give back as an instructor, a tutor, and a mentor. And I try to give back every week. I work on a couple of different platforms to do so, and I teach over here in San Diego.
Awesome. All right. Dr. Softwares was your path.
Yeah, I'm thinking that games had something to do with this. You're sitting in a gamer's chair, aren't you?
Totally gamer's chair.
It's the best on the back. I spent way too much money on a very nice chair, and I found the gaming chairs are the best on my back. Right. Unbelievable.
They're also really cool. Like if you race cars, you make believe you're in your race car seat. Anyway, tell us about Pedestal. What's the company all about?
Pedestal, I got to tap into that drive to give back, and it's actually a mentoring mentee platform. So we leverage social media to connect mentors to mentees, and we give them a private shared workspace where they can work together, earn rewards, and validate their progress with data. We're pretty excited. We're going to launch at the end of the year.
All right. Excellent. So let's see what we can learn here. This is a very almost controversial topic. We're talking about failure, stopping failure. I mean, there's a number of people who don't believe that's possible. Some people view failure as just another opportunity for learning, but sometimes there are things you can avoid, right? So let's go right into the topic today. And who's introducing the show? I think it's Kim's time, is it?
Carlos?
Go ahead, Carlos. Please introduce the topic.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tulio. And thanks, of course, Aaron, for being here.
Thank you.
So there's a question in the air. How can software engineers, startup founders, and virtually everyone empower themselves to overcome failure? This is exactly the question we're going to be answering today. And we're going to be discussing the topic, why you will fail and what you can do to stop it. I look forward to this one. So first question for you, Aaron. Why did you choose this particular topic, and why did you feel it was relevant for today's day and age? Let's get it started with that.
Yeah. One thing that you'll always hear, and I want to challenge that notion, is learn from your failure, right? And you should. Don't get me wrong. You should learn from your failure. Here's the thing. When you want to learn from a failure, you are going to set yourself up to fail. And so instead of setting yourself up to fail, you should start to look at it in a different light, where you can reach for the stars and prep yourself so that that failure might come and you will learn from it, but you don't have to go into it being like, everybody tells me I'm going to fail, so I'm going to fail. And so for me, obviously making that shift from med to tech and then eventually having a startup, it's very relevant. I don't want to go into my startup and invest all my money and then fail. I can't think in that term.
Absolutely. Thank you. You know, this reminds me of something that I heard a while ago, and I read it somewhere in a book, and it said something like failure is overrated. And I'm truly aligned with that particular statement, because as you say, you can there's this worshiping of the failure status, like you have to fail. The more you fail, the more successful you're going to be. I think it's a little bit overrated. We all want to succeed, and if we can diminish the possibilities of failing, why not do so? And then also well, we can reprogram our minds to succeed more than fail. We know it might be inevitable to fail sometimes, but let's just not get too fixated on that. Okay. Thank you for elaborating on that. Okay, Tulio, Kim, you got questions?
Yeah, this is an interesting topic. You're a pretty young guy, right? So you've
Mhm.
got a long life ahead of you and lots of
course.
opportunities to learn things and fail upwards. At least that's the mindset that a lot of people have
Mhm.
is
Yep.
if you're going to fail, fail upwards. And there's some people who believe that if you're not experiencing any failures at all, you're really not pushing yourself. You're not growing. You're playing it safe. So and every person I've ever met in my life who is extraordinarily successful today has had the most epic failures in their lives. That was like a wake up call, including yours and yours truly.
Yep.
So, what's your thought prod and your context around this topic that you've chosen? Like, what's your thinking around, when you say how do you stop it? What is your thinking? What's your context behind stopping a failure?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things, and you talked about it when you said had a huge failure, is when you fail, you get humility. And something that a lot of people that are reaching for the stars and some of those people that have those big dreams and might not tap into them, and you know them, right? You look at them and you're like, this person is saying that they're going to have $1 billion business in a couple years. For sure, probably not. But they're reaching for the stars and they haven't had that humility moment yet. Instilling humility early and believing that we're all equal and we all have a starting point, that we have this launch pad that makes us some sense of equal, gives you that point where you can say, okay, I'm starting this and I want to get here, but I understand this is my first time doing this. I haven't experienced that failure yet. So you can study people who have failed and you can study people who have been successful. One of the most interesting people to look at is the CEO and co-founder. Well, I don't know if he's CEO anymore, but the co-founder of Twitter, right? Jack Dorsey, who ended up doing Twitter and then Square. That is unbelievable. I mean, most people won't have a single $1 billion business, but to have multiple unbelievably successful businesses is winning the lottery multiple times. And so don't reach there. Humble yourself and set realistic goals, but you need to exceed your base goal. So you need to set that first goal and make sure that it's higher than what you would normally go for, and then push yourself. So instead of actually learning from the failure, you can learn as you ramp up, right? That's the end goal. Get from this is what I wanted to do, and this is what I think I can do, and then push that barrier so that what you think you can do is higher every single time.
Interesting.
In the context of the topic, you talk about software engineers, founders, virtually anyone. Is there a particular reason you chose those particular folks and industries? Is that because you're living that more right now and you're seeing, a lot of engineers can be perfectionists. I mean,
Yeah.
engineers by nature like to solve problems and they're very hard on themselves and they don't and sometimes a failure is like an epic, you can't use the software. So it's either works or it doesn't, right? So
Yep.
what's your thought process behind helping folks in that industry think outside the normal bounds of fear or failure? What are the things you want to share with them?
Yeah, software engineers and entrepreneurs are very similar because, as you said, software engineer is you kind of hinted at it, but they're builders. So they are consistently building something, and as they're building it, they're shooting for perfection, right? When I have an idea as a software engineer, when I have that idea and that vision from the front end perspective, which is the visual piece, I want to make sure it's going to look exactly like I'm picturing. In fact, I'd love it to look better. I call it polish, right? We want to put polish on it, make it have that wow factor. When you start a business, same thing. How do you get your early adopters? You have to have that wow factor. You're building blocks up to make sure that your business is going to be successful. So they're in a similar space and a similar mindset. One of the things that software engineers struggle to do, many of them, because I've seen quite a few pitches, is switch from that robot developer mode into I'm a business person now and actually pitching the company. It's a problem with scientists, usually very, very smart people, right? They have that industry knowledge, but then when they make that shift to entrepreneurship, it's tough for them to get their point across a little better. It's something I had to really hone in on, and so far so good. We're doing all right, but it takes a lot more effort than you would originally think. So I try to tap them into the same space in my mind because they're very similar.
Aaron, you mentioned entrepreneurship or having this entrepreneurship mindset, and this is what I've encountered through the years, is that I've met countless wonderful, talented, skilled software developers, engineers, and the way I see it is that many of these engineers have this. How can I say this? This they have this personality of being more or perceiving themselves more like like artists or coding artists, right? So it's like in that context, many of them might kind of even frown upon the fact of even taking entrepreneurial path. So it's like kind of contradictory.
Yeah.
So what would you say to these people, to these wonderful developers who might have like $1 million idea, but then they're not really keen to doing whatever it takes to become an entrepreneur, basically? So what would you say to entice them, to motivate them?
Yeah, you're tapping into the solution. And so here's the thing. When I come from a family of artists, and every single person in my family can draw. They can draw. My mom paints, and they put together these great pieces of art. I get them for holidays each year. I get a new piece of art that I hang up on my wall or put in the kitchen. Or I have no artistic ability at all. I'm the only one in my entire family. I can't draw. I still draw stick figures. You just see my handwriting. I can't read it sometimes. And I always tell people exactly what you're saying. The way that I express myself artistically is through code, because I can take those building blocks, put them together into this piece. And that's my masterpiece when I put together a program or some sort of website. And so when we talk about they might not want to push themselves, the solution there is you need to surround yourself with people who are going to push you. And that's going to come in the form of coaching, mentoring, therapy. You're not limited. It's 2021. Everything's digital now. I mean, we're here chatting digitally, right? And you can do this in any of these spaces. And there's so many resources out there for you to connect with these people. If you guys have ever read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? Great read. Any of the Rich Dad series I recommend. He talks about how he had a rich dad who was his mentor as he ramped up through entrepreneurship. And he got into real estate, as most very rich people do. And when he did that, he had that mentor his whole life. And he talked about how his real dad was very, very successful in education, but he wasn't rich. And his rich dad, which was his friend's dad, was rich because he tapped outside the box and started to think differently. So when software engineers don't want to break out of that box, you have to give them their own value prop. So you give them the tool, right? You give them the mentor, the coach. You say you should find someone in the space. But then you tell them the value prop of tapping outside. And for me, the value prop was that I'd be able to help others. With Pedestal, I can create something that's going to help others succeed. We're big on professional development and your personal growth. We're not focused on giving you the best engagement in the world. You'll find it. We give you the tools to find it. But we want to make sure we're focusing on your growth. And as most millennials now, they are very focused on it, and they are more connected.
Okay, one more thing. Thank you, Aaron. That was great. But I got one more thing for you. Now, getting more granular, I'd like to tap into specifically your platform, Pedestal, and link it to the topic. How would you say that a tool like Pedestal, which is social media, and I quote, that enables growth, how would you say that Pedestal contributes to actually helping people decrease their chances of failure, or even how does it teach it? How does it teach them to deal with failure or reduce it or get rid of it altogether? So is there any connection in there in the way that you envision the company to be?
Yeah. So I'll start with the way that we view each person. So on your profile page, we have your own pedestal, right? And it starts off very small because you come onto the platform, and we talked about humility earlier. We want to humble you a little bit. We want to show you that you're down here. And if you want to build yourself up, you can. We give you those tools. And so as you work on the platform, your pedestal actually grows, and you're right at the top of it. You're building up your own pedestal. And so as they work on the platform, we give them data. We're huge on the data piece because, as I said earlier, validation. You want to be able to showcase that you're ramping up towards those goals. So we want them to set a goal and track towards it, but that goal should be above what they've ever set, because we can show them this is how you're doing. Here's some recommendations for you to improve. For example, maybe you spend 20 more minutes on one of the tasks you set on the platform, right? And that would give you a 10% increase tracking towards your goal. So that big data validation piece pushes them towards becoming a better version of themselves.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Thank you. Okay, Kim, Tulio, you got any more?
Yeah, I'm curious about sort of, from what I understand, this matchmaking component of Pedestal with mentorship. So how would somebody get involved, or how do you choose that I want to be a mentor, I want to be a mentee, and how are you aligning these folks so that they can in fact achieve their goals and together? And I think in one way, prevent my failure by learning from the failures or mistakes of those who came before me, right?
Yeah. No, great question. And the thing is, so I talked about mentoring and coaching earlier, and kind of to segue into this, mentors are experts in the space. So the difference between a coach will draw the best out of you. And there's use cases for both. Mentors are experts in the space who can tell you about their failures. So, and how to not fail, right? Hopefully. So with our system, it works similar to the way Upwork works, where you can go on and you can see all of the people in a certain industry. So let's say you wanted to get mentored in, we'll even get out of the software space. We can say something like law. You can go on and you can search for mentor law. Maybe you are an aspiring JD student. You can go on, find somebody, they look at their ratings, and we also have something called a mentor impact score. So with all that data we're tracking, we can return it to you and say, this is how effective they are overall in each of their engagements. And it's weighted on some of their interactions with their previous mentees. So not only will you be able to review the ratings and reviews, you can take a look at data to validate it a little bit further. And once you get that relationship, you get that workspace, you're not locked in. So you might find someone better in the future, and that's fine. That's the way we want it to work. It's not a match made in heaven every time. So we give you recommendations, but it's up to you to ultimately find that person that's good for you.
What do you find motivates the mentors in your platform? I think the mentee motivation is easily understood. But how do you get your mentors?
Yeah, so I once heard there's only a few things that motivate people, right? And here's the thing, when you get somebody on the platform, they're motivated by goodwill initially, of course. But we live in an era where millionaires have 7 sources of income, right? That's the standard. That's what I've heard a ton of times, and I'll continue to reiterate. So we want to make sure we're giving them at least some form of income. Maybe it's a side hustle. If you're very good, it won't be. We have a reward system in place, but mentors can also charge. So we leverage freemium model, so you can get on, and no matter what, you can get an engagement with a mentor for free. So we want to make sure you're at least getting that initial conversation. I don't want other people to have the barrier I had when I was trying to change into tech and I didn't have anyone to talk to. So even if we just give you a little bit of time, we want you to be able to get on there, talk to somebody, get some guidance. And then if you like that, great, continue to talk to them, work with them, but reward them for their time.
Excellent.
That makes a lot of sense. Who do you consider to be influential or a mentor of your own?
Yeah, I'm very, very fortunate, and I have a lot of people in my space, and I could list off name after name. I recently spoke with a gentleman named David Barry yesterday, and we were chatting about leadership, and he talked about the 90-10 rule, and it's a little bit within our scope. But
90-10, I only know the 80-20. What's the 90-10?
Yeah, the 90-10 rule in leadership and networking is, so 100% of the time, you should be courteous and reciprocate the nicest feelings and empathy and be nice to everyone you meet. 90% of the time, it will be reciprocated back. 10% of the time, it won't. So for that, that's great. That's a good play on numbers, right? I'm a numbers guy. So if I do that, 90% of the people I meet will be nice back, and then 10% won't be. And so chatting about that and chatting about organizational development and leadership, David Barry is an incredible guy. He's awesome in organizational behavior. He hosts his own series of podcast shows and speaks at events. I'd recommend checking him out.
Yeah, I like that. I think even just having that mental preparation of 10% of the people will not reciprocate leads into perhaps not stopping that failure, but allowing it not to affect you as
Play the numbers
deeply,
game.
right? Like, yeah, okay,
Right.
like that's my one. Fine.
Yeah. I've got to give you props, Aaron, because there's a lot of folks who struggle with asking for help or surrounding themselves with mentors and coaches
Mhm.
for whatever reason. It's an ego thing. They're blindsided to it. They feel like it's a weakness, or they can figure it out, and end up wasting a lot of time and actually learning through a lot of failures, which could have been avoided by just surrounding yourself with people that have paved the way already, and trying to copy their playbook or at least learn from theirs. So
Yep.
kudos to you for doing that. How did you decide that that was an important part of how you were going to build a business and how you were going to go down this path as an entrepreneur? What triggered you this desire to want to surround yourself with coaches and mentors like that? What was that moment that said, I need to do this? Perhaps share some of that with some of those who are sitting on the fence about
And I
doing
need to do this, and maybe I can make money off of this.
Yeah. No,
that.
it helps that the passion's there, but obviously, you can make money. That's always an incentive. Yeah, I when I was changing, I mentioned earlier when I changed careers and I went from med to tech, which is a big switch because I've worked with doctors now, and you'll find that every doctor is technically illiterate. It's incredible. They're smartest people in the world, and they don't know how to use a smartphone. Unbelievable. But so I made that shift, and I realized there's a million different programming languages. There's a million different technical things you can learn. And you can go and look at a job and it'll list them out. And you're like, okay, I'll learn this, 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 and this. And then you won't get the job. And you're like, oops, I just wasted a bunch of time, because you look at another job, it'll have a bunch of different requirements. And so I realized I was lost. And so what I ended up doing is I went to and took a coding boot camp. It's a 6 month immersive program. You get a mentor, you get a team, and it had a huge price tag. And even then, 6 months goes by, great experience. And I realized, all right, that incentive is gone for that mentor. I can go and chat with them, and my mentors still like my things on LinkedIn, but they're not available. They're busy. They're running their next 6 month cohort, right? And so I didn't want people to be in that boat. That price tag, not everyone can afford. It's big. And even then, it's gone afterward. I wanted these longer engagements where we're still rewarding mentors for giving their time, but at an affordable price point, where even if you just need a 30 minutes to an hour chat, you can go and you can find someone to do that with, even if you don't have that financial backing. And I didn't want people to be in the same boat I was in, and hopefully I'm able to do that and give them that opportunity.
Amazing. So starting with that now, what's the sort of longer term vision? Have you thought about where this could have use cases somewhere else? What's your thinking in terms of the
Yeah,
vision for the future?
yeah, for sure. From a consumer side, we want it to supplement experience on your resume. It's impossible to get entry-level jobs nowadays. You need to have 3 years experience, and you're going to get paid like you have no experience. Absolutely unfair. So we want to be able to say, I was mentored or menteed in this space for X amount of hours. Here's my certification. Great. Plug it right in on your resume. From a business standpoint, we also want to plug into alumni networks, entrepreneurship programs at educational institutions, and give them their own private version. Similar to Yammer. For Microsoft, they have Yammer, which is just a social feed. We want to have that private social feed, but also the integrated mentor platform, so they can centralize their engagements, see how well each mentor is performing. And it can plug in. I was a tutor at University Online, and it would plug in perfect there because the tutors can get live feedback, and you can even say, okay, I might need to be doing this better. Maybe I need to spend more time sharing my screen. If I share my screen 20% more, I can get the better return. This student's grades will go up by 10%. And so we can plug into organizations just like that. The future's in data, and I'm a big believer in that.
Aaron, we're approaching the final segment of today's conversation, and I wouldn't want to leave without asking you something that is very important for us as a company and for a lot of other successful companies out there, and it has to do with the people element, with the human side of the equation. So you're building a company, a very promising company that I'm sure is going to skyrocket soon. And as that progresses, my question to you right now would be, what kind of people would you like to bring in on board? Or how do you envision your company culture to be? Is it I don't know, freedom based, horizontal, vertical? What is important for you as you build your team and your company and your culture?
I love this question, and I'm very happy you asked it. I challenging the paradigm or challenging the norm early rather than later. Corporate structure is a nightmare. I mean, some of the things that you'll experience in corporate, I hope, I mean, many of you probably have. I hope you don't have to again. You just don't feel like a person. And so our company culture, I'm flat. I am the line of support for my team. I can't do this forever. I realize as I scale up, once I get to about 20 people, I won't be able to do that. We'll have to have some hierarchy. But I'm developing the early people on the team as leaders. I asked a couple of my teammates recently to provide me with leadership vision plans. What did they envision themselves as leaders in the organization at a later phase? What's their vision of their role, of their impact on the organization and on themselves? I don't want them to think about just the organization, because what I like to say is, whether you're with Pedestal for 5 minutes or 5 years, I want you to get something out of it. I want you to grow and I want you to learn. When somebody comes on board, I make sure I buy them a book that's relevant. I'm big on reading. Maybe that kind of showed, but we buy a book that's relevant, and then we talk about their training plan to ramp up. So from day one, we're focused on getting them to the next phase. And I have regular check-ins at their leisure, whatever they like, I kind of address it that way. But we're really big on finding those people that are driven, have that entrepreneurial spirit, and maybe they do want to learn a little bit about business and they have a tech background. I loop them in, right? We have 3 big values, and one of them is transparency.
Amazing.
Okay, thank you so much.
So many studies have shown how career planning is strategically important for managing attrition. People want to grow, whether they're going to grow with you or somewhere else. The idea is, if they can learn from you, they'll stay with you as long as they can, and they can create values for themselves. So congratulations for doing that, having that growth mindset, obviously attracting awesome people too. We're coming up on time. We have one question from the audience that I thought was really important to ask, and that is, have you been thinking about using AI to capture insights as they're being shared, so that you can continue to offer value at an affordable price, for example, for non-in-person mentoring? So it's like, imagine, the machine's listening to the mentoring, and like someone's asking a question and the machine remembers, hey, I have an answer from this awesome mentor. Like, is there a plan to eventually automate some of this and have a lower base, maybe a freeware, conversion kit, something like that, to potentially incite people to gain access to mentorship without the pressure of having to deal with a person one-on-one? What are your thoughts on that?
That's a really cool idea. I like where they're thinking. I don't ever think you can remove the person element. There's some things can be automated, but I think having that person gives you feeling, empathy. You can actually make a connection. It's, maybe I could be way off base. Maybe we'll be able to make connections with AI and robots in the future. I remember chatting on AIM with Smarter Child. So maybe I'm dating myself. If anybody remembers that, it was one of the first AIs you could actually go and chat with. I don't know if that's going to be the future of mentoring. I like the idea, and it's something we are going to do. We're going to plug in machine learning and have our data get more and more optimized. And then eventually we want to share the data with the world. So I don't want to just hoard all the data. I don't think there's a lot of mentoring data out there. I want it to be public. I want people to grow on and off Pedestal. That's the mission. That's our goal. But I think there'll always be a person element.
Awesome. We had a guest yesterday on our show. I guess it's similar, mentors for dogs, right? Trainers for dogs, where they're using AI, but it's still an in-person person involved. So it's been great to have you as our guest. Our time's up today. We have to keep tabs on you and as you make progress and your use cases. We congratulate you again. Stay with us just for a few minutes as we go off the air and wrap up. Carlos, what do we got coming up next week?
Sure. Thank you, Tulio. We got 2 shows, Tulio. Tuesday, we'll be speaking with Joel. Okay, here. Okay, be patient here with me. Nkao. I hope I got that right. So this is one of those challenging last names. Nkao, the CEO of EcoText. The topic: why collaborative learning is the future. And then on Wednesday, we'll be speaking with Gary Goldberg, founder and CEO of Squat Locker. The topic is going to be active empathy in business through the lens of Quakerism. So I look forward to these 2 conversations. There's no interview on Thursday because we have it all our all hands, I believe. Is it? Do we?
We'll do a
Or is it-
rebroadcast.
or we do a rebroadcast. And then, of course, Monday we have the recap show in which we recap this week's shows in 10 minutes. 10 minutes. That's what we have right here on Dojo Live at 12 p.m. Pacific, as ever. And thank you, everyone. Stay safe.
Bye.